Hey guys, and welcome to a new video. Today I'm going to do a kind of a build guide for my Arc Ignite prototype, the Arc Nebulous kind of style. And I honestly think this might be the kind of like best overall Ignite build right now, or at least for me. I'm an Ignite enjoyer from Wave Conviction Ignite, EK Ignite, Arc Ignite, as Mana Stacker, as Eternity Shroud, as like whatever you want to try to do with Ignite, I probably already did that. And this time around, this is more of a tanky approach to an Ignite character, because now with the new challenges since the new league, with the T17 maps and all these kind of things, I thought it might be a good idea to just try to make a very tanky, beefy kind of Ignite build that still remains or have quite a good amount of damage. So there would be like this kind of like scaling in terms of currency, where you say like, hey, I could league start something like Wave of Conviction Ignite, I could league start like Arc Ignite, and later on with a good amount of currency, let's say like a 50 Divines or something, you can do a pretty decent EK Ignite build. But this one here would be somewhere around like the mirror mark, so once you have like good investment, you probably want to get like a lot more tankiness into your build, and I think I achieved exactly that. We're currently running around, let me open PUB here, about 130,000 EHP. We're using the Incandescent Heart. I'm getting 25% of the ally damage taken as chaos damage. We're running this CI, so that's basically 25% less elemental damage taken, while having 90% maximum resistance, thanks to Cold Res stacking and melding the flesh. But we still have a reasonable amount of DPS on this build. In the current state, this is not a max DPS build. I'm currently running like a 15 mil Ignite DPS just with my regular Arc, and my Val Arc has like a 25 mil Ignite DPS, but there is still a lot of room for improvement here. Some things that I changed, for example, I was switching out Empower for Inspiration, which is obviously less damage, but the thing is, usually with the new like revamped flasks, we don't have them at reduced mana cost anymore, and it is very hard to sustain the mana cost of something like Arc, because you want to shoot Arc multiple times just because you want to proc the ally overload and inflict like a very high rolled Ignite. It's just not like one time and just everything is dead. Well, in most cases, this is exactly what happens, but in the end of the day, you want to maintain shooting your Arc to fish for very strong Ignites, but you cannot really sustain the mana cost without going into like heavy forms of like mana regen and clarity and stuff like that, and we are pretty much starved of mana reservation efficiency already. So the best way, as I came up with, was using an Inspiration. As I said, less damage, but it gets down the mana cost of Arc to 55. It used to be 110 or something, so now I can like really kind of like shoot a couple Arcs before running out of mana, and we still have a good amount of sustain. So now it feels like a lot better, and this is what my builds are all about. I want to have quality of life builds. I want to have builds that feel good. I don't care about my DPS numbers or my effective EHP or anything like that. When I play the build and I feel like this is really good, then it is good, and I don't care about what the numbers in PUB says, because if this would be 5 mil Ignite, I would still play it. If it's Ignite cap, then I would still play it, you know? That's kind of the idea. For the map showcase, we're gonna run 100% Delhi Al-Hasmin Cemetery map, just so you can see that this build can definitely take a hit and is not too bad in the terms of clearing aspect and all these kind of things. Probably gonna loot the map afterwards, so we're gonna keep the video a little bit shorter, and then we're gonna go into detail on what this is about. So we have all our auras up. There is instantly Crosis spawning, which is pretty nice. So we're just gonna run around trying to load up a nice Val Arc, and we're gonna just release a big hit, and now you just see all the stuff popping up here. Actually, man, Val Arc is just a very nice button to press. So I guess we're just gonna continue running around, summoning a lot of monsters, get a big juicy Val Ignite off, and yeah, watch the world burn. This is pretty much what Ignite builds are all about, and this is just... Ignite builds are so much quality of comfort, like just the clearing aspect, the laziness of a dot build, you know, just hits like every single spot. And as you see, my build is pretty tanky. I can definitely take quite a bunch of hits thanks to the Aegis Aurora. So we are doing, what is it called? The glancing blows. So So we are spell block capped, we are block capped. We do get 60% of the blocked hits thanks to glancing blows, but the thing is, we actually want to get hit. We're not running any kind of like spell suppression on this build, because we recover 2% of our armor as ES every time we block, every time we block any spell or attack, and this gives us quite a nice sustain. And there is also something, this could actually be somewhat of an AFK build, because my Tempest Shield, which gives me quite a lot of block chance, spell block that is, does actually quite some damage. If I just stand here, as you see the monsters, this is not Righteous Fire, this is just like I get hit and my Tempest Shield procs, and the Tempest Shield is actually inflicting an ignite that kills off the majority of the monsters, which is actually quite funny. So sometimes I'm like trying to gather as many monsters as possible to get a big juicy Val Arc off. But then my Tempest Shield actually kills off the stuff and kills off half the monsters that I try to pull together, which is kind of like a bit awkward. But as you see, it's not like we need to try to survive or need to do the map. I'm actually toying around here, just trying to get like big packs of monsters to just throw in a nasty Val Arc and have fun, right? And that's what I mean. Like, the original EK Ignite version is not that tanky. It does have some layers of defense. We do run spell suppression, we do run determination and grace and stuff like that. But you know, it's still not a tanky build. I mean, it's probably tankier than it's okay tanky, let's say it like that, but it cannot really tank any big hits from like an Uber boss or something like that. But this build actually can. Like, you can almost face tank the majority of the Uber boss abilities, also the T17 ones. Obviously not the one-shot ones that you are not supposed to tank, but you know, like all these like laser beams that are like flying around where you should not get hit, you can just stand there and absolutely no problem. As you see, boss DPS, this is a T16, as I said, 100% daily, so the monsters do have quite some life. But for an Ignite build, I think the damage is like really, really strong. Let's load up a Val Arc, release it. That wasn't really a good hit, but there is Maven still, there is, you know... Give it a couple of seconds, trying to get another Val Arc. And should be done. Maybe my Ignite's holding a couple of seconds, so... There he goes, down. As I said, 100% daily Conqueror map. Not too bad of a showcase, and as I said, it's just a really fun build to play around and just, yeah, drill the map, more or less. Good, there was like 34 monsters remaining, so... You know, Arc is a monster of clearing, especially when it pairs up with Ignite, and, yeah, that's pretty much it for the map showcase. So, what is the thing about this build? So, this is a multi-conversion build. This basically means we're going from the different elemental types and then gather a lot of, like, extra chaos damage. This is thanks to the Incandescent Heart, for example, which says gain 20% ally damage is extra chaos. So, every time we're converting into an element, we're getting an extra 20% chaos damage. So we start off with a lightning skill, which is Arc. Then we convert the lightning damage into cold damage thanks to double Call of the Brotherhood here with my Calandra's Touch. So it's like 96%. And then we're running a cold to fire support, so 50% of the remaining cold damage is converted to fire, and we get 31% cold as extra fire. So every time we're getting extra elemental damage, we're proccing this like Incandescent Heart and getting a shit ton of like chaos damage on top of that. But it's still like I would say the majority of the damage here is fire, even though we have like a very big portion of chaos damage, but we want to have fire as our highest damage type, just to proc the Shaper of Flames, which says 25% more damage with ignites you inflict with hits, for which the highest damage type is fire. Dude, what a sentence, dude. So that's why I say, like, you want to have like a very high amount of fire damage and yeah, getting as much chaos damage as possible. So it is kind of important when you set a build up like this. If you go to the config, you want to check here the highest damage type here on the left side. If I put this to physical, you're going to see that my DPS drops by like 3-4 million ignite DPS, just because this 25% of my ascendancy is not active anymore. If you keep it on default, it calculates itself, right? So that's why I say, like, you scroll down here and you see if the damage form is fire and your damage goes up, then you probably have too much cold damage, too much chaos damage, too much something else. You know, you want to have fire as your highest damage to proc that. Good. Let's talk about the gearing aspect. Nebulous, it is more or less a bit of an aura stacker here, so we're actually running a bunch of like large cluster jewels, mana reservation efficiency, because we run quite a bunch of auras. We're running Malevolence, we're running Clarity, Tempest Shield, Hatred, Purity of Eyes, Determination, and Discipline. You know, so everything that is like tankiness, with like 2 damage auras. Hatred was like the last thing I added. It was quite nice damage, but it's not mandatory, right? Like, Malevolence would be better for just pure ignite, but if you go into conversion, Hatred is just the best aura, because Anger, for example, or Wrath gives you like flat damage and stuff, and more spell lightning damage doesn't do anything for our ignites, but Hatred is just generic, more cold damage, and Fizz is extra cold, which doesn't do a lot for the arc build, but still, you know, lightning into cold conversion, then we get the more damage, and then we get the fire to cold conversion, cold to fire support conversion basically, and trigger more and more and more damage this way. So, as I said, aura stacking in the terms of we run a bunch of auras, and we're also going to go for maximum resistance, and this is when the Nebulous comes into play, because we get 20% increased cold and lightning damage per 1% cold resistance above 75. And this is the actual resistance that you have. It's not about the uncapped resistance, about the maximum resistance. So that basically means that we are having 90 max resistance minus the 75 base is 15 over max, times 20 is like 300% increased cold damage and 300% increased lightning damage. And also it procs like this. We get 20% increase, 300% increased lightning damage on our arc. And once we go from the Call of the Brotherhoods into cold, then we get the 300% increased cold damage. And this build could have a lot more DPS if you just dual wield Nebulous. But as I said, the goal here is not to get like just an arc ignite cap character. It is more like a very tanky approach, a build that can run uber bosses, that can do T17s and stuff like that. And currently I'm farming my T17s with an arc ignite character, which is kind of like weird because I never thought I'm gonna get an arc ignite character to do like the hardest content in the game. But here we are, and this build is going to get even crazier once we probably gonna play around and try to turn this into an EK build to get all the sorts of physicals extra on top of that. But more of that later. So that's why we have quite a bit of damage. Clearing aspect, probably an Exploding Nebulous. Not clearing aspect would be, like single target wise, would be something like Ignites. You inflict deal damage faster on your Nebulous implicit. They usually are pretty cheap, like maybe at the moment, since I'm making this build more popular, probably like a Divine or two with the Ignite faster. They're not really too expensive. But the thing is, rolling a Nebulous is not easy, you know, like trying to hit like this 20-20 on both sides will probably take you quite a bunch of Divines, so probably sometimes it's better to spend like 10 Divines in a good rolled Nebulous and just don't care about it instead of buying the worst one and try to Divine it yourself, right? Good. So, how do we get to 90% maximum resistance? Well, pretty easy. We're stacking cold resistance. We're getting Purity of Eyes, which gives us maximum resistance. Then we get the Aegis Aurora with maximum resistance, and with revamped Sapphire Flask also giving us maximum resistance. And once we hit the 90%, we're gonna throw in a Melding the Flesh, which turns all of our maximum resistance to be equal to our highest. That means Purity of Ice, like cold resistance is 90, and that's why my fire and lightning resistance is also 90. But we also get minus 70 to all resistance. Here the Thread of Hope minus 10 all resistance. So I think it's like this is just a mage build because you need the resistance. I was able to get it down to just using like an all resistance affix because I started the build off with a Bismuth Flask with all resistance, but at some point when the gearing went better, when I got some nice resistance gloves and boots, I was able to get like a Sapphire Flask where just the all res suffix was there, and it was enough to get me res capped. So let's take a look at our tree. What we do here is we have double large cluster jewels set up with Prismatic Heart, Sadist, and yeah, this Ornithine display is not like too mandatory, but it was just like I had 2 points over, and that was like the best 2 points that I could pick, right? And then we're gonna go actually for Shock Effect. So we are using here Overshock and Astonishing Affliction twice, and sometimes even get like 50% shocks on Uber bosses, which is actually ridiculous, right? And then the small clusters here are generic increased effect mana reservation cluster jewels here. And for the resistance that I had over, I picked a fire resistance because there is a mastery here that regens 1 life per second per 1 uncapped fire resistance. In my case here, it's like, what, 40 flat regen. It's not a lot, right? But the thing is, there is a lot of builds that are tanky and tanky against one-shots, but they just lack recovery. And what I would love to have here is like increased recharge rate, flat life regen that turns into ES regen with the Zealot's Oath, right? To overcap fire resistance, take the fire mastery. And if I get like 500-600 flat ES regen per second passively out of combat, I'm already happy with that, you know, because 0 recovery just feels so bad. Because if you do like an Uber Searing Exile, you tank a ball, and then you just don't have any recovery to tank the next ball, for example, this just feels really, really bad. Good. Then we have one here with Fan the Flames, just for the ignite spreads. And then we have Violent Invigoration and Wasting Affliction. I POB'd that, and the double and one time Wasting Affliction, Violent Invigoration was more damage than running like a triple over Shock, Astonishing Affliction, because the thing is, you want to try to get to a 50% shock, and once you surpass the 50% shock based on POB, then all these like effect of lightning ailments doesn't do a lot anymore, because if you already have the highest shock in the game, adding additional shock effect doesn't really do too much. Good. This is just a placeholder helmet, Crown of Inward Eye. Yeah, nothing to add here. This is basically, the corruption would be like an Enlighten, but I still have an Enlighten over here, so this is multiplicative with each other. But the thing is, I actually want to have a Blizzard Crown with nearby enemies take more fire, or have like less fire resistance, towards with ignite faster and mana reservation efficiency. This would be like my end game kind of craft helmet that I tried to do at some point. Ages we talked. Dragon Fang, pretty nice to just bump up the levels of Arc, because Arc scales in this build quite nicely with our flat, with base levels, so we get flat damage. Gloves and boots are basically just life resistance, yeah, ES resistance gear, Mage Blood. Aether's Promise also offers Alias extra chaos for some extra damage and some leech. Might even opt in for like 1 point over here with the spell damage leech to SES, but we don't really have too much spell damage, but you know, better than nothing, I would say. Good. What else is there to talk about? Watcher's Eye, we just have like anything the tanky, which have reduced extra damage from critical strikes and fizz damage taken as element, and that's why I say like we're building this like very, very tanky, and we're still having like some really nasty ignite. So imagine if you just built this like pure DPS wise, easy ignite cap, not even a question, right? Tattoo wise, we transferred basically every int node into a 3% max ES node, because it's a slightly little bit more ES than the flat int, and then a few extra like take reduced extra damage from critical strikes just to get me crit immune, basically. With the Watcher's Eye here, 58%, so it means we need 11 tattoos, 55, 45, 9 tattoos of critical strike avoidance, and then we're good. Then we're always obviously ailment immune. I'm solving this here with the Flask suffix, chance to avoid being shocked with the increased effect, and Mage Blood, this is over 100%, and then we just need to go with a Storm Shroud, and we're good to go. Then we also have, I think I have Bleed immunity over here, which is not the worst thing to get rid of, just because there is a lot of like corruptions and Call of the Brotherhoods that are pretty cheap, and with the Tainted Catalyst, you can still get the quality on to get the 48% of lightning damage converted into cold damage, right? But you get a bleed immunity. We're poison immune anyways by default, because we're running CI. We're immune to chaos damage and corrupted blood wherever you can fit in. Good. I did actually make some adjustments here. For example, Arcane Capacitor, just for mana regen, because as I said in the start, you want to cast Arc more often than just one time. And if you don't have Eldritch Battery, if you don't have any form of like mana restoration, basically, it just feels bad. And that's why I opted in like some mana nodes, some mana regen nodes, as well as inspiration, even though it means it deals less damage. Then here, a neat little trick here for Smite, which is kind of like a POB thing. When you use Smite, you gain an aura that gives you added lightning damage, and this is flat. This is for spells and attacks. But since we're not having accuracy, we're not having attack speed, it takes sometimes quite a while to actually hit one of these Smites. But once you get it, this aura then scales with with your aura effect, basically, right? So if I turn off Smite over here, once I find it, Smite over here, we are basically losing like 2.5 mil Ignite DPS if we're not having that, right? But, like, honestly, I just never use Smite. I know it's good, and I know it bumps up my numbers, but most of the time I just forget that I have a Smite when I'm playing an Ignite Arc build, right? But this is just like, for like Uber Bosses or Simulacrum, you can just randomly throw in some Smites when your Ignite is on, probably after a Val Arc, and just try to fish for the added lightning damage. Let's talk about MTX real quick. We have the Ghost Veil Helmet, which basically transforms my energy shield and my mana into these like ghostly things. Then the Storm Weaver Nebulous and the Indomitable Aegis Aurora, which are both from like Kirok's Vault from the past somewhere. Then we have Demon Parasite, the Burning Torture Gloss, which turns my Ignite proliferations in those red circles. The Demon Parasite Boots, Cosmos Weapon Effect, and then Demonic Stygian Portal Effect. So, based on the skills, every aura is disabled. We're running the Encasing Molten Shell Celestial Brand, the Automaton Arc Effect, some Demonic Flame Dash, and the Celestial Warcry. And that is pretty much it in the MTX section. So, what is the next plan? So, basically, I actually consider doing like a Penance Brand Poison as my end of league build, but I think it's going to be this build, just trying to turn it into an EK Ignite, which, so there's like more issues to solve here, right? We need like, now we need to go from physical conversion instead of just going Call of the Brotherhood, which opens up 2 ring slots, but then I need Gloomfang, and then I need to probably add Herald of Ash and Herald of Purity, because both Heralds are scaling at EK insanely well, but that also means I need to drop an Aura, because I just don't have the mana reservation efficiency to get 2 more Heralds over here. It needs some changes on the skill tree, because I'm probably gonna use both of these mana reservation Herald thingies, maybe some more mana reservation clusters, maybe Aura effect. I don't know how the journey is gonna go. Maybe it's gonna be worse than this build, but if I can make EK Ignite running on the archetype with the Incandescent Heart, I think this is gonna be the best version of EK that it's ever been in, because just insane amounts of damage, insane clear Herald explosions, and on top of that being very, very tanky. Yeah, it basically checks all the boxes for me. But we're gonna see in the upcoming days what I can get out of EK Ignite, or if it's even possible to get all the mana stuff going, and so on and so forth. Alright guys, thanks for tuning in, thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.